So our next costume is going to be our light bulb costume. So this is for our 3-day week from the 70s. And what we're going to use is black sheeting, and we're also going to use a gold fabric. So we're going to start off with the black, and basically we're going to make a really large circle. So you're going to get black sheeting, which is really wide. So this is it folded in half. You can see, so that's the width of the fabric. It's really, really wide, and that is folded in half twice essentially. So we've got 4 pieces there. So I have that folded, as you can see, and pretty much yours will probably be a little bigger than this, I think. And what we're going to do is make a large circle, as I said. So when you fold it over twice, you will end up with this corner here, which is where the fabrics fold over each other. And that is going to be your center point, and you're going to work out from there and make a radius and make a circle. Well, you're going to make a quarter circle, but you're going to cut all 4 pieces at the same time, so you'll end up with a full circle. So basically you'll need a piece of chalk. Once you've got this folded over nice, you can use your measuring tape, or you can use a string, or you can even use some sellotape. If you get the right length of sellotape and you fold that sellotape over so you cover all the sticky, and you can just measure this out. So it's your center point. So for this, the radius is 1 meter. So I'm just going to use a piece of chalk. This only has to be really rough, and we just make little marks all the way along. My table isn't quite big enough, so I'm just going to have to move that up a little bit. Pull that off the edge. So I haven't really moved the fabric, I've just kind of shoved it around a little bit. I'll go back to my 1 meter. Obviously, if you have lots of space, you could open this out and put it on the floor. So that's our 1/4 circle. So all you're going to do is you're going to cut this 1/4 circle out, and when you open it up, you will be left with a full circle. So also we need to make somewhere to put your head through. So we are going to put a little, see there, little mark. So it's just going to be another little 1/4 circle in there. I will give you a template for this, and this is only the prototype, so that doesn't really matter. I'll give you the right size, and then you're just going to cut that all the way along. As I said, this is a prototype. A lot of my prototypes would be really exact, and this one's not going to be really exact because this is not going to be one of the ones that are used, only because I couldn't find the exact fabric in Dublin that I have bought online for you guys to work with. The sheeting is the same, but the gold fabric is different. So this will be just your basic prototype. So just make sure when you're cutting that you've not lost a piece of fabric underneath. That can often happen. So there we go, we've cut off our excess, pop that to one side, and what you'll be left with is a really large circle. Okay, so that's folded over, so that is going to be very hard to see on the video, but that's a really large circle. So I think if you leave that in a half circle, so once you've got it cut, actually, if you just leave it in a half circle, of course I've opened it all up now, but if you leave that in a half circle, one of the things that we're going to get you to do, first and foremost, is to put a hem on the edge of that. Now, it only needs to be a tiny little hem. You're not really hemming it like you would with clothing. All you're doing is folding over like a centimetre or even maybe a little bit less, and you can run a zigzag stitch along that, and that will capture all the potential fraying bits that are going to come off the edge. The sheeting fabric doesn't fray too much, so you don't really need to worry about it too much. But yeah, so if you hem all of your circle around the edge, another thing that we need you to do is to create a little channel, because the kids are going to wear these over their bodies, and their arms are probably going to finish about here, and then we're going to put a little channel here, and we'll put a little rod into that so that they can hold on and they can open these out really nicely. So you're going to run a little channel right on your half circle at the end, so about 1 foot. Again, I'll put this onto some tape, and I'll tape it onto the prototype of this so that you can see exactly where to start and where to finish. So that's the two things you do: make a little channel, hem your ends. I guess we'll also need to put a little hem on that neckline so that we don't end up with fraying neckline as well. So that's step number 1. Get your big circles done, get them hemmed, and yeah, that is the start of our Lightbulbs costume. This is the gold fabric that I found in Dublin. It's not the same as what you're getting, as I said. Yours, I think, will be probably a little bit lighter to work with. It's hard to tell when you order fabric online exactly what that is. So what we need to do with the gold fabric is to make a semicircle. So basically, when we add the two things together, you'll have the black circle underneath, and then half of it will be gold. So that's essentially what we're trying to do. So what we need to do now, the radius of our black circle was 1 meter. So now we're going to find the exact same 1 meter radius on this fabric. So basically, there'll be a bit of waste with this, and that is fine. We'll get to use it up somewhere else. So you're going to fold over your fabrics. You will need wider than half your fabric, which is what makes this, I suppose, a little bit wasteful design. But it was the only way I could find this to fit, because I need these to be quite large. So I am going to see what 1 meter looks like. Pretty close. That is actually 1 meter there. Just going to make sure this is sitting pretty nicely. Stick that there to stop it from moving. And again, with our little chalk, we are going to make this radius. Now, if you don't have a measuring tape, as I said, and you used a string on this one, you can just use, you're basically going to make your black circle as wide as the fabric is. So that fabric was 2 meters wide, so obviously half of that was going to be 1 meter. So this just has to match that. So if you haven't used a measuring tape, then you just measure the width of this one, and that's, use your string to use from that one to do this one. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Basically, you do all of this without a measuring tape, is what I'm trying to say. So that is our meter. I'm actually going to make this a little bit bigger than obviously that is going to be your starting point. So the opposite to what I did earlier. Again, this just has to be quite good thing about carnival costumes, you don't have the same particular measurements as you would for clothing, so there's always a good margin through this a lot faster than I am. I guess I'm also trying to show you at the same time, so make sure you can see everything I'm doing. So that is going to be our semicircle. So I think the fabric that you guys will be receiving, as I was saying, will be a wee bit kind of thinner and maybe slipperier than this one, so you might need to stick a few pins in this to stop it from maneuvering all over the place. We're going to add a semicircle onto the circle of black. So there is our gold semicircle pinned onto our black circle. So that's just pinned all the way along, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to treat these as two separate pieces, but we're going to join them at the top there, which essentially would be the middle of our black circle. So we're just going to run a line of sewing right across the top. Now if we were doing things really perfectly, we would then sew the gold to the black, but I think that's actually going to be quite difficult, especially when I don't know what that fabric is like that you're going to receive. If it's got a bit of a stretch to it, it's just going to make an absolute nightmare. So what you've done already then is you've hemmed the black. So I haven't hemmed this yet, but you will have hemmed the black edges already, and then we'll add the gold to the black at the top, and then we're going to hem this separately as well, so that it won't be attached to the black. As I said, I think that will actually just get quite difficult, so we're going to hem that separately as well. Again, just a single fold over and a sew. So I'm actually just going to sew those now, and then I'll show you what that looks like when that's done. You'll see I've not cut out the neck, which should be around about here, so I'll cut that out afterwards, and I will sew the neck to the black. Okay, so I'll show you that once that is done. So I have just hemmed those separately. So I've done the black, just one fold over, and a zigzag stitch, a really large zigzag stitch, so it catches all the little fraying edges. Same with the gold fabric. Now I have a feeling that yours will move a lot more and will wiggle a lot more, so you might end up with quite kind of wiggly edges, and that is totally fine. We will deal with that, because I think the beauty of these costumes will be in their movement, so I don't think anybody's really going to notice the hem edges apart from maybe yourself. So that is those all hemmed. I also have added that to the across the shoulders, essentially. There's my little neck there. So I wanted to wait until after to cut this part of the neck, the gold, and I'll show you why now. And I'm going to turn this sort of inside out. So I spoke earlier about creating a little channel in the black fabric. So actually, because you add on the gold, you have a natural channel, so you don't need to do that little channel as I was telling you at the beginning, because that is naturally here by the fact that you have added the gold onto the black. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. I'm just going to flip it around so you can see what I'm talking about. Yeah, so there it is. That is your channel already there. Okay, by the nature of the way that we sewed it on. So that's your channel inside. What I've also done on that edge is I have finished off that channel, so it's not an open edge. So you can see there, so that is closed off. The reason that's closed off obviously is because we're going to be sticking a little rod into that, and if we don't close that off, the rod's just going to pop out and the fabric's going to fold back. So yeah, so that's your channel already done, and actually that channel goes all the way across the entire top, more than we need, but that is totally fine. So once that has all been hemmed and that gold has been put on, if you just open that out on the table, you'll see what's left in the gold to cut to match that neckline. Now my one is quite small, yours will be a little bit bigger than this. It's quite small for a neck, so what we'll do then is we will cut this to the right size. I wouldn't cut it before the black, before we've put the gold onto the black, because it could just make everything go wonky and you'll be trying to match a neck that doesn't really match. So you're better to leave that until this is attached fully, so you know really what you're working with. So we're just going to cut around that a little bit bigger than the black. We're going to run that through the machine, and then we'll just hem off that edge. As you can see, I haven't hemmed this neck yet. If you have already, that's perfect. If you haven't, then yeah, you can do that now as well, once this gold is attached to it. So I just realised as I had cut that little bit of gold out that there is potential to go wrong here. So basically you're going to cut that out, and then you'll have to just make sure that the fabric is sitting the right way. So if you see here, so this is the edge that we want to sit out, so all your hemming and stuff is inside. So obviously if you stick this to that, then you will end up having to wear it inside out. So basically just find where your fabric is, like your outside of your fabric is going to be, which is this one, and then that underneath one is what is going to get attached to the gold, not the one on this side. So it'll be the one on this side. Let me just pin that and show you a quick image. So this is what I mean. So you've got the back of your costume, which is the black one, and you've got your front, which is gold and black, and you've got your nice outer edge there, and all your seams are on the inside the gold there. Okay, so what I would do is run a stitch around that, making sure that you're catching that black underneath, and then sew it a second time by folding that underneath, and you should have quite a nice edge along there. So that will be the neckline finished. It's hard not to get these little nicks in the fabric when you're doing it, but yeah, I just did a zigzag around the edge, and I actually put a split in the back of mine because I couldn't get it over my mannequin's head. So I will make the template either big enough to do that, or else we might put this little split in anyway. I'll clarify that when it gets closer to the time anyway. So that is that. So that's just was sewn twice, you can see, and then the zigzag just catches all the little fibers that might be coming out to fray your costume. So there it is with its gold front, and then we flip it around, light bulb switched off, and it has a black back. Now it'll be a lot more stunning once the kids are able to maneuver this around. So here we have our templates for our light bulb headpieces. We have a front one which is made in white, and we have a back one that's made with black. So these are supposed to signify the light bulb switching on and off. So the front will be white and we'll be painting it a bit of yellow, and the back will be black. So it's the same as the costume that the kids will be wearing. The front of their costume is gold and the back is black. So when they flip around, it'll look like the lights switching on and off in a carnival way, of course. So you will get sheets of foam that are 2 meters in length and 1 meter wide. So mine is a bit chopped up here. I've been doing different projects. So you will fit 10 of these templates onto 1 sheet of foam. So if you're quite clever with your placement, just keep them really close to the edge, you'll fit 2 beside each other in width, like that. And then you'll fit 5 lengthwise. So 2 times 5 is 10, so you'll get 10 of these pieces in each sheet of foam. There'll be 3 sheets of white and 3 sheets of black, and that will cover our 28 head pieces. So I'm going to show you what to do next with our white foam. So there's our white front template drawn out. So I've used a ballpoint pen. So you just need to double check as you're drawing around your templates that the mark is actually going onto the foam. Now it will score the foam anyway, so if you've got good light and good eyesight, you'll see the line anyway. So I don't know if you can make that out there, you'll see the little score line. Otherwise, just keep checking your template as you're going to make sure that that line is showing up on the foam. So now we're going to cut that out. So we're going to blade this out. And what I would do, if you're laying all your pieces out, first thing you want to do is rough cut it. So you would just cut straight up here, you would cut out there and around the edges, about 1 centimetre away from what you have drawn. And then you can take that piece off, and then you can work on it more freely when it's not all attached to the big sheet of foam. Okay, so that's the first thing you're going to do. And then we're going to make sure you've got a cutting mat or a sheet of cardboard or card underneath your foam so that you don't cut your table. So I have just started cutting that foam and I've cut around the big circle part, which is really easy. This is going to be a lot more fiddly to get in here, but I just wanted to show you. See these little pieces that are coming off the edges. So I've been using my blade a lot today. That tells me that the blade is starting to lose its sharpness. So once you're getting these little bits on the edges, the tip of that blade is obviously getting a bit blunt because it's catching in your foam. So if that's happening, well, it'll be one of 2 things. It'll be either you're not putting on enough pressure, or that your blade is starting to go. So you just have to keep a little eye on that. So for these little curved bits, they are going to be a little bit difficult to do. If you're struggling with cutting these out, I would recommend that you leave that straight line in, and when we are putting these together, we can paint those edges black so they become kind of invisible. So that's the first choice. If you're fine with cutting, go ahead and cut these, but cut them after you've cut a straight line really close to them, because then you can just get the blade in and do like little triangles, and then you can kind of curve them off afterwards, because if you're trying to get your blade in and out and in and out, that is just really difficult to do. So that would be my way of doing that. So what I would do would be cut into your inside point, pull that out, and then do your next bit. Okay, so yeah, my blade is definitely getting a bit blunt, plus I'm trying to do this one-handed. But yeah, so you would just do a little bit at a time, so you're cutting those little pieces out, and that gives you a little bit more freedom to move instead of trying to do everything all at the one time. Okay. Another way to make these edges cut a lot easier is to pull this foam away. So it's hard for me to show you this exactly, but if you pull this foam away with the hand that is not using the blade, so if you pull it, you're giving your blade more space to move, and that makes that cutting a lot easier, because you're given this space for your blade to move, because essentially if that is in there quite tight, your blade is getting caught on itself. So if you can use both your hands, have one pull the foam away as you're cutting that out, then you'll be able to maneuver your blade a lot easier, and that's how I would actually do it. So this is an example of what happens when your blade starts to lose its sharpness. You'll get these little catches in the foam, so you just need to be careful of that, because when that gets quite bad, you're just going to struggle. Firstly, you're going to struggle to cut the foam. Secondly, it's just going to look really bad. So the best thing you can do is just keep an eye on your blade. Once you start to get a couple of little nicks like that in the foam, it just means the tip of your blade is getting blunt. Foam is very soft, but it certainly does blunt blades very quickly. So just keep an eye on that and don't push through that too much. If it's starting to go and the blade has to be changed, that's the nature of the business. So yeah, so that's just a little example there. you'll find these little things. Now, if they're not quite like that I've shown you, it might be that you've just not put enough pressure on your foam. But if you want to test it out on a little piece extra, just to see the pressure and to see if it is actually catching all the way. If it's catching all the way, then it's probably that the blade is blunt. So now we're moving on to the back part of our light bulb, which is your black foam. So because your foam is black, it's going to be a little bit harder to make that mark with your ballpoint pen. Your ballpoint pen is still the best thing for this, unless you've got some tailor's chalk. It's really the only other thing. So my light is fading a little bit here, but you can see along here that when you use the ballpoint pen, whether it makes a mark or not, it will make an indent. If you go over that a couple of times, it'll make an indent that's actually quite clear. The video may not be picking it up as well as I can see it, but there it is there. And that is actually fine for me. You can see the line all the way around. So you're just going to want to cut that the same way as you've done your white front. The only difference in this one is that the base goes across the back of your head, so you don't need this little part for your face to come through. Okay, so just going to go ahead and cut that with your blade. So there is my white and my black templates completed. So I'm just going to pop my white on top of the black. Now again, as I said, if you struggle to put in these bumps on the side, just leave that line totally straight and we'll paint that design in. So if you're figuring after the first one that's not for you, please do just put that little straight line in there. Your fingers are more important than the costume. So now the next part that we're going to do on these is we need to glue them. So on your template I am going to mark exactly where you're supposed to glue, but it's basically going to be from the start of these bumps all the way down the edge, and so that's going to go on a pretty much on a straight line down there. So you're going to lift this one to one side and you would glue down the edge like that, spreading your glue out really nicely. Be careful not to get too close to your edges here, because once you sandwich this on top, what's going to happen, only the glue is going to come out the edges if you've got too much glue or you haven't spread it out, and then you're going to put your hand on top and you have more chance of burning your fingers by just sliding your hand down the side. It has happened to me frequently, so just be careful with that. And what you would do is you glue one side down and then you would move over to this side, roll that back, glue there, and then pop that down. So you would have to hold them in place for a little while to make sure they don't come apart. These are very important, especially down the end, very important parts to make sure are glued, because they're the only thing that's keeping this headpiece together. So that will make more sense when you see the image of the finished one, because your head is to slide inside here, and if they're not glued, that's just going to pop off and the whole thing is not going to work. So that is the next step. So here's our two pieces of light bulb, your black side and your white side. The templates that you'll get, in addition to the ones for the actual shape of light bulbs, is your the little element, as I said already, and also your template for just keeping your lines right at the bottom. So before we get on to those, we need to put a bit of colour into this white light bulb. So what we're going to do is use a little bit of foam. You can see the shape of the foam there that I've cut. So this idea just occurred to me, so I hope it works out fine. Welcome to the world of carnival arts. It's a lot of trial and error. So we're going to start with yellow in the middle, and it's going to get lighter as it goes out, and we'll be left with white on the edge. And when that's dry, that is when we'll move on to using our element, because obviously we can't paint onto that wet. So you're going to need a good paintbrush, and you're going to decide roughly where your centre is. So I've decided that's the centre. You could be more technical if you wanted. See if that is actually the centre. And we're just going to do a big yellow blob lots of paint. So I'm just going to pop that brush to one side. Now I'm going to take some white paint. And we're going to put that white paint, not touching the yellow. There we are, just making a fried egg. So lots of paint there. You can see absolute blobs of paint, and that is what we want. So here's my brainwave, hopefully that works. So just stick a little pin into the small side of your foam, pop that in the middle, and drag that around. Just do this a few times. You can see I'm actually putting that at a bit of an angle. Also, I might just add that I've also got the black sheet underneath. Now the reason I've got that under there is because if you just put the pin through one sheet of foam, it won't go all the way through, so you want that in there for a bit of stability. And what's happening is the paint, because you put on quite a few blobs of paint, the paint is moving. Every time you send it around, it's moving. So what you're getting is a blend, which is what we're looking for. So you see I just keep changing the position of my hand every time I come around. It's a wee bit laboursome, but it's really hard otherwise to get that blend done in a really even kind of way. That's quite nice now. I'm going to pop that off, and you've got quite a nice centre on your light bulb. So when we put our element there, it'll glow exactly where your element is going to be. I think probably the one of these that I'll give you, I think I'll make it a little bit bigger, because I actually think it would be nicer if there was a wee bit more yellow. I mean, if you're a confident painter, you can absolutely hand paint this. That is no problem at all. It's just foam is really porous. Maybe porous is the wrong word. It's a very sticky surface to paint on. So it's hard to get very perfect lines. So yeah, it can be a little bit tricky to make nice lines. Extra white and extra yellow, I think. I'm trying to make these as glowy as possible. This is acrylic paint as well, so you do need to be really careful that you don't get this on your clothes, because acrylic paint is basically plastic, so that will get into the fibres of your clothes and will not come out. So I definitely need a bigger foam. So I will send you that wee foam piece, and you Anyway, you see what I mean? That becomes quite a nice glowing center on the front of your light bulb. So I have extended out that white line. I just took a second piece of foam and did continually in the one direction outside the circular yellow in the middle, which is probably actually an easier way to do it. So I might just give you 2 pieces of foam and you can kind of play with that and see how you get on. So originally we were going to paint the silver bit, but I have this lovely silver fabric that I think would just do a much nicer job than trying to paint the foam. So I'll give you the template for this piece that you're going to put on, and you're going to put it on with a glue gun. So you can pin it in place if that is helpful to you. I'm not going to pin it, but you know, this fabric just doesn't really move much, so I don't think it's really necessary, but you absolutely suit yourself in that regard. So my glue gun has been heating up, so you'd start in the center and work your way out. So if you fold that back, you can see my drawn lines underneath there. So you will get your glue down, spread it around, and you see I'm going to do the head piece part first, the part that hits the head. It's going to go all the way down. Just let that fall down and then press it down. Now the bad side about this silver fabric is that you visibly see the glue through it, but we'll get over it. So you can see what I mean there. You can see the lumps and bumps where I've put lots of glue. So maybe kind of minimal glue for this would be the best. So if you start in that center part and that's glued down, then you know you can just go from there. So this one, 2 little bumps. Now you might notice that I did not spread out my glue there. So make sure you do that. So just get that down as neat as possible. Just be careful of overspill when you do put your glue down, because it can catch your fingers. And there's our last bit. I think we can get all that done in one foul swoop. So just spreading that out now. So if we just stick to the edges, that's all we're going to need. So that's one half done. So I would flip over and do the other half then. I don't think you even need so much glue up here, as long as your edges and your part that's going to be at the face is done, then I think that's the most important part. So this isn't so important up here. So yeah, so do both sides with your glue gun, and obviously that is also going to be on your black side as well. So then you're just going to trim off your excess fabric that you have there. Now these bumpy edges are going to be kind of tricky, so I just cut that off straight, and then afterwards you go in and get those little nicks out. So you would change direction of your scissors. If you're left-handed and you don't have a left-handed scissors, you're going to have to let us know, because you'll need a good scissors for doing this. So you can see it's going to be a bit of like a snipping job, really, more than a big like cutting job. The same thing up here. You have to use a good scissors and get the tip of your scissors that isn't blunt, and just snip a little bit at a time, maybe like you're cutting hair. So you see, it's not super neat, but I don't really mind that. We're just going to leave that raw edge anyway, so I think if people are up close and looking at this, then we've done a bad job of our overall costume. So once you have all your pieces cut out and your your egg is dry, you would use your template to put your, mine's not dry so I'm not going to lay it down, to put your little template there for your element, and we would paint that in with black. Now you can do that two ways. You can either just draw straight through the template with a marker and then paint over it, or you can take a little tiny sponge and just sponge the paint into what I've done there for you, and then you can fill in the lines afterwards. So it's two different ways to do that, so you can suit yourself in that regard. In addition to putting your little element into the center of your bulb, you're also just going to put some little lines into the sides of your silver thing there. So you can use paint for this, or if you had a black Sharpie you could also use that, which would be really handy. Otherwise just get a ballpoint pen or a pencil and just draw those lines in, or sort of scrape them in rather than draw them in. Let's see if that's making a mark. Yeah, so that'll make a mark. As I said, you can do with a Sharpie. Not a regular marker, it would have to be a permanent marker, because if it is raining when we have our parade, then obviously if you use something that's water-based and not permanent, that will run, so you don't want that at all. So yeah, so you'll draw in your little lines and your little element in the middle, and I think that, yeah, that's going to be that pretty much finished. And then you would glue it, you'd glue the black to the white once your black side is painted as well. So I've actually pinned my little things in place there. You could also do that. Foam is brilliant for using templates on, because you can pin them down. Now to get through that cardboard you have to give it quite a forceful push to get that through. So just please be careful if that's what you're planning to do. So you can use your brush and dab those down. You can see I'm not using absolutely loads of paint, because if you use loads of paint it'll go through the template onto the other side and you get really muddy lines on the other side. There you go, that's your little element drawn in. So you would fill in the lines that are missing there, so there you go. So that is the little element finished off there, and I've put just a couple of little lines as well into the circular part. I'm also just gluing these edges down now, gluing my black to my white. I would just like to say that if at any point while you're making anything with us really, if there's anything that you feel really uncomfortable with, that you thought you could do and you change your mind, just reach out to us and let us know. If you're not confident to draw but you're confident to do everything else, you know, we can work around your capabilities, so don't get stressed out if we've given you something difficult. Just have a chat with us, particularly on Wednesdays at the coffee morning at 11 and at 6 p.m. You can reach out to Diane or myself. And so there we have our light bulb costume complete, including the fabric, and obviously at the back it is black.